Welcome back. It's still right here on Politics Today, and this time we're switching gears. And as much as possible, we try to talk about the economy because if there's any data you can easily go to know how well or how badly a government has done, whether at the federal or the state level, it is economic data because the numbers don't lie, facts don't lie. So we try to look at this as much as possible. That's why we're being joined on the program by an economist, an analyst as well, Mr. Boniface Chizie, who is joining us here via Zoom, but is in Lagos. Mr. Boniface Chizie, thank you so much for coming on the program, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
We have been talking about the economy for a bit, and one of the things I quickly want to find out from you is your impression on the budget as to whether or not this budget is able to meet the aspirations of Nigerians, given what you've seen in terms of the assumptions and the spending limits across sectors.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the budget. The history of this country is that we don't come short in terms of articulating the budget. I think the issues we have is trying to implement. So I think that we don't have the discipline. We're not able to find the discipline to implement the budget. So the budget is as good as it's implemented. So I think that we can cry to high heavens in terms of the things we have in the budget, in terms of the assumptions. One of the things about the assumptions is that they're never going to be correct. If they are correct, that's coincidental. So the budget is not going to be correct, but that shouldn't be an issue. Where the budget, you have the discipline of implementing the budget, and you have a monitoring system in place, you're able to take it in stride. You take it as you go, and you're able to make corrections as you go. So it's not something that is written in gold. That is not to be changed. So you revisit the assumptions as you go on. So we shouldn't waste time on the assumptions whether they're correct or not. But if you look at the assumptions and look at what is currently happening in terms of the key assumptions, take oil production, you take inflation, you take GDP and so on, you find that we're within the ballpark. So I think that shouldn't be an issue. But the thing is that, first of all, are we going to have a budget? I'd be surprised if we can commence implementation of the budget 1st January. And that would be wonderful if we can do so. Because one of the achievements of the last administration, they were able to return us to a budget cycle that coincided with the calendar year. I think that's the practice everywhere.
So the second part of my question is actually, besides this assumption that we talked about, is this when you look at the budget, will it be able to meet the aspiration of Nigerians? That's the second part of my question. I don't think you answered.
Well, what are the aspirations of Nigerians? You would ask. We want growth. Want employment. So we want the value of the currency, the exchange. To firm up. So I think that it's something you have to do in a roundabout way. So you take the exchange rate, for instance, which has caused most of the havoc we witnessed since the inception of this administration. What has caused it? So we try to merge exchange rates, and we did it in a way that it was bound to cost. That was a misery that was foretold. And so you don't merge the way we try to do. You have crisis on your hands, and then if you are not careful, I think some of us didn't believe that we will see 1,000 naira to $1. But it's gone beyond that. It's 1,200, and it's going. So I think something must be done. So in the new year, to inject some currency, supply and demand, and we also hope that Dangote refinery will come on stream, because as I said in another platform, that's a game changer. So if we can stop fuel importation, and then we save the monies from the exchange, it's about 30% we spend on fuel importation, and we put that to back up the supply, for dollar in the market. That should support the rate of exchange of the naira. So I think that's important. So there are a few things that are happening, and we are optimistic, guardedly optimistic, that maybe in the new year we might begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, the governors, I'm not sure you're privy to the meetings of the governors, but let me just pick your brain on it. The governors had met with the president today on the island, where he's on vacation, and I'm sure that you may have read a thing or two about what he said. One of the things he talked about was the fact that, look, for national development to come to fore, both the subnational and the federal government have to work collaboratively to ensure that happens. What in your view, should the governors be discussing with the president at this moment, given the state of our economy, if that's possible?
Well,
What if, as a citizen, and I'm sure you come from a state in Nigeria, your governor is there, what should they be discussing with the president, because our economy is in dire strait?
well, I think that the governors, they have to stand, to be counted. What has happened in the past, I'm quite pleased with what I've seen lately. Budget presentations in various states are being discussed. In the past, it wasn't so. So we just discuss the budget presentation at federal level, and everybody goes to sleep. Well, we tend to forget that we have 36 states in this country, plus federal capital territory. And if you're going to have development that is holistic in this economy, then it must happen across the federation. So everybody has to be on board. So we need to make sure that what happens outside Lagos is that the National House of Assembly, they are in the pocket of the governors. So the governors, the checks and balances are supposed to have in place, and as per the democracy, which we practice, it's in practice in default. So it's not being done. So we need to make sure that things are done. They have to stand up, and the issue of waiting and collecting federal allocation monthly, the internal generated revenue, they should begin to refocus. And how many states in this federation can be independent of the federal allocation? Not many. So I think that it's about time that everybody stands up and they're counted. So it's important. You don't clap with one hand.
Mr. Boniface, let me bring to your attention something I saw from budget. There are 2023 State of States reports, and there are 2022 audited report of the state. Now, the only state that is below there are just about maybe 2 states that are below the 45% mark in terms of proportion of dependence on federal allocation. That's just Lagos and Ogun State, which is 25 and 32. The other states, about 43% of their revenue comes from federal allocation. In fact, some so bad, like Bayelsa and Delta, from that audited report, 92% of their revenue comes from federal allocation. Delta, 84%. And these are oil-producing states. And most of the times, we just focus on the federal government. What should we be telling state government that they need to start rethinking in terms of maybe optimization of their economy, so that they become more viable, because the argument will always be restructuring. So I don't know, as an economist, what would you advise the state government to start doing so that we don't see this kind of high dependence on FAC? Some 70%, some 90%, some 80%. That means without the federal allocation, they will be insolvent.
Well, I think that the states, in fact, across federation, our tax revenue to GDP is about the lowest. And when you go outside Lagos, the federation is even worse. So I think that the states, they should stand up. They should know that the internally generated revenue is an imperative. So the dependence on federal allocation is a lazy approach, to governance. And lots of economic agents that are not being taxed, that should be being taxed. And so there are so many people in the formal sector that earn lots of monies, and that all we need to do is to find an ingenious way of taxing them, and lots of money will be raised. So the governors must be challenged. They must be told, that they must be intentional from the point of view of trying to reduce, their dependence on the federal allocation. I think we need to be very careful about that. This federal allocation has just been bloated, because we remove the subsidies and so on, so the money that's flowing in. So if you're not careful, they're going to relapse. But, there are lots of revenues that are not being collected. Lots of revenues that are being free charged, are not being put to productive use, across the federation. I think that we need to better get our acts together. It's very important.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Boniface Chizie is an economist. He joined us from via Zoom from here in Lagos in Lekki. Thank you so much, sir, for your thoughts on the program.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.